Hello and welcome to another Stamp with Amy K Facebook Live. And today I'm going to show you how I made a card with the In the Moment stamp set, which is one of the stamp sets from the current January to June mini catalog. And I added a few new things too from the upcoming catalog. So lots of fun things to show you today. And hopefully you like the card and hopefully you enjoy the video. So let me just make sure, yep, looks like I'm good to go. And actually I'm kind of centered today and sort of straight, which is unusual for me because usually I end up with all sorts of crazy and end up wiggling the screen all over. But I think we're good today. Maybe I finally figured it out. I should put tape on the table or something. So, hey, Akiko, thanks for joining. I appreciate you being here. So, all right, so this is the card that we're going to make today. Hey, Bree. So this is, like I said, the stamp set is called In the Moment, and it's one from the current mini catalog. Hey, Barbara, thanks for hopping in today. And it's got some really pretty images in it, some nice sentiments, and things that are just a little different. You know, just need to send somebody a little hug or a hello card. This is a good one to do that. Hey, Penny, and Jamie's here too, so thanks for hopping in. So this is the stamp set that we're going to be using. And the background papers you may not recognize if you haven't studied your catalog like I have. Hey, Marilyn and Danette and Akiko. I used some of the new Design a Daydream Designer Series paper, and it is a beautiful pack, and it is a huge pack of paper. And Phyllis is here, and Karen and Pamela. It's nice to see you all. It's a huge pack of Designer Series paper from the upcoming 2022 to 2023 annual catalog. It is a host exclusive item, and it is a huge pack of 48 sheets of 12 by 12 Designer Series paper, and it's I think it's 12 different designs, two-sided, but it's a beautiful, huge pack of paper, and you can get it with using your Stampin' Rewards if you have an order or a party of $150 or greater. So it's a huge pack of paper, and it's a really great deal. Stampin' Up! Has one in the current catalog, but don't tell anybody. I love this one better. So I love the colors in this one. It's so soft and pretty. The other one is nice because it's like bold and bright and rainbows, but I love the softer colors in this one. So that's just my opinion. And like I said, don't tell on me. Hey, Julie and Trudy and Renise, glad you're here as well. And if I missed anybody else, I apologize. So I do have another new item that I used on this card, and it is the Fabulous Frames dies, and these are kind of tucked back in the back of the new annual catalog. I can't remember what page they're on, but they're in with the dies. They're not bundled with anything, so they're just a freestanding set of dies, and they're awesome. So this one actually cuts out a large frame that would fit definitely on a card front. And then this is the frame that I used today, and this one actually, like I said, it cuts out a smaller kind of scallopy looking frame. This one cuts out an oval frame, and it's got the little stitched edging on it and embossing on it. And then we've got this one that's a little sentiment die cut. And then these are corner pieces. Hopefully you can see it, but it cuts out two of these. So you'd put it on, like, you know, the corners of a card, and these are the same thing. So it is a great set of dies. And again, it's kind of hidden in the back of the catalog. So if you haven't seen it, I actually missed it. I can't even believe I missed ordering these because I totally didn't even see them in the catalog. So when we had our first pre-order, then of course I had to do a second pre-order, and you know what happened after that. You know, just went a little crazy. So all right, let me set that aside. And one more thing that I used on here is the stitched rectangle dies. And I used this die actually to cut out the sentiment. And I'll show you how I did that in a second. It's a really easy little trick that you can use if this is too long, you can trim it down. And I'll show you how to do that in just a second. All right, let me scoot that over a little bit. One thing to tell you, actually two things to tell you. First, I have a Designer Series paper share from the new annual catalog. Doesn't have anything to do with this, but I don't want to forget to tell you. So Designer Series paper, you get 6x6 piece of every single new Designer Series paper from the upcoming catalog. And I also have double shares, so you can get a 6x12 of any of the 12x12 sheets. It's a great deal, good way to get a great working sample. My shares are getting ready to close out next week, Monday, because I'll be ordering everything on Tuesday. So if you're interested in hopping in for my share, stop over to stampwithamyk.com, find my share information, which is on pretty much every blog post. There's also a page on my blog where you can find the details too. So, hey, Mary Kay, glad you're here live as well. the last thing I wanted to tell you about before I actually get started on the card is we've got the retiring list from the current annual catalog. Retiring list and sales going on now, so these items will be retiring again on Monday the 2nd. The new catalog starts on Tuesday the 3rd, so I can't even believe it. We only have like a week left of the current annual catalog. So if there are things that you're wanting on that in that catalog that are retiring, make sure that you get them ordered like today. They're only available while supplies last. Okay, enough about all that. Let me know if you have any questions on anything. I'm always happy to chat and tell you more. But let's get started on some card making. Hey, Karen. All right, so I've got a petal pink card base, and this is cut to 4 1/4 by 11 and scored at 5 1/2. And all the details are going to be on my blog for this tomorrow, so you don't need to worry about it. I'll link up the blog post here in the video description, so you'll be able to find it if you want to go take a peek at the measurements. But this one, actually, normally my card fronts, you can kind of switch back and forth between the book fold and the top fold cards. This one, with the way that I did the linen thread around it, actually you have to have it a top fold card, otherwise it won't work with the linen thread. If you don't like the linen thread, then you don't have to add it, and you can do whatever kind of card base you want. So, all right, so again, this is a piece of the Design a Daydream Designer Series paper from the upcoming catalog. Isn't it pretty? It's so pretty on both sides. So, and this piece is cut to about 4 inches by about 4 1/4. So it should fit over side to side on the card front and leave an 1.5 inches at the bottom. And if I've cut the other piece right, then it will cover the bottom as well. All right, so let me see if I can flip this over without sticking my fingers into the glue. That would be a nice little bonus. All right, and I'm just going to stick that directly to the card front with the multi-purpose liquid glue, or the green glue, or whatever you want to call it. All right, just making sure that everything is lined up before I stick it down for good. And then this is another piece from that same Designer Series paper pack called Design a Daydream, and the back side of it's got the little stripes on it. Hey, Karen, thanks for hopping in. So, and I'm going to add a little multi-purpose liquid glue to the back of this one too. This one is cut to about 1.5 inches by about 4 1/4. And I will, again, try to attempt to put this on the card front without sticking my fingers into the glue, which I'm known well for. So I try not to use liquid glue unless I have to. Like this one, you kind of have to because you need to be able to wiggle the pieces around a little bit. But I try not to use it because I tend to have my fingers stuck to everything and nothing stuck on the card front. All right, so we've got that stuck together. And then I took a little bit of linen thread and I wrapped it twice around the card front. And I will try to tie a little bow here for you. So I'm just going to take this and wrap it around kind of generally where the seam is at, and I can wiggle it around a little bit as needed once I get the bow tied. And going to snip this off. So it almost, you're right, I guess I hadn't even noticed that. I didn't even think about it. I just, was in a hurry, threw on whatever top. I actually just got out of the shower like a few minutes ago because, that's how I roll. Some days it's earlier, some days it's not. So, all right, I'm tying up first. When I tie bows, particularly with linen thread and baker's twine, I usually tie a knot first because it lets me kind of wiggle things around, keeps everything in place, and then it lets me be able to work and fluff the bow a little bit nicer. I don't tend to do it with ribbon because the ribbon bows get thick enough or get too thick when you do that. But for the linen threads and the baker's twines and that type of thing, I usually tie a little knot to hold everything in place. And then I can fiddle with the bow as needed and trim off the tails here. All right, so let me set aside the card base. I did do a little bit of die cutting ahead of time. This I actually cut with the Fabulous Frames die. So I've got this one, which is one of the new die sets. And I just took a piece of the Heart and Home Designer Series paper, one of the wood grains, and just ran it through the die cutting machine. So it's pretty easy. All right, the next thing that I did was I grabbed, hopefully I've got it here in the right spot, the light Crumb Cake Stampin' Blends marker. And I did another one of my fantastic coloring jobs on it. You'll see and you will just be amazed at my coloring skills or lack thereof. And basically I just put the color on the frame. Speedy quick, to make it look a little bit more like a picture frame. That was kind of the look I was going for when I did this. Whether that in fact truly looks like a picture frame, I don't know. That's up to, remains to be seen, and I'll let you decide if you think it looks like one or not. But that was sort of the look that I was going for as I was adding a little bit of color to this. And again, just going to take the edge of my Stampin' Blends and kind of scribble it in. And I didn't do a really detailed like coloring over all of the little, you know, the creases and lines and whatever. I thought it made it look a little more vintage-ish if I left it sort of not perfectly colored. So there you have it. Again, I know you all are amazed by my fantastic coloring skills. So hey, Denise, thanks for hopping in. So I'm going to set that aside for a second while we do a little bit of stamping. I've got just a piece of basic white cardstock, and I've got my lady image from the In the Moment stamp set. And I've got Tuxedo Black Memento ink. And we're just going to ink it and stamp it here, hopefully. Because I noticed her hair didn't look very inked, so I want to make sure that I get everything inked on it. I probably need to re-ink my Tuxedo Black ink pad. It's probably getting to be that time. All right, so we're going to take that and stamp it on basic white cardstock. And then I'm going to start doing a little bit, actually I'm going to die cut it first so I know where I have to color. That's probably a better idea. So I'm going to take that same die from the Fabulous Frames dies, and I'm just going to take it and run it through the die cutting machine, and it's just going to cut out the center of this. So I want to make sure that she is centered on the background here. However I stamped her, if I stamped her crazy, I can adjust the frame around a little bit, but I just want to make sure that it is straight when I run it through the die cutting machine. So I'm going to be off to the side here for a second. Hey Jenny, thanks for hopping in today. So glad you're here. So hopefully y'all are enjoying your Tuesday. It's a pretty, starting to warm up a little bit here in New Jersey. It's kind of, I don't know, supposed to get some rain this afternoon, but it's supposed to be a little warmer, so I can't complain too much about that. All right, so this is what we're left with when I die cut the frame. So this is actually, if I wanted this frame, which I can keep it and set it aside for another project. But this time around, what I wanted was actually this part. So I took that right out of the center because it die cuts it automatically. And let me grab a couple of Stampin' Blends markers and we'll start doing a little bit of coloring. So I'm starting with Petal Pink, and I have got the light Petal Pink Stampin' Blends marker to start with. And we are just going to color in her dress. And again, you know me and my fantastical coloring skills, or lack thereof. I just basically take the light usually and start with that one. Get color on the project. I'm trying not to color over her belt, but if I do, it's not the end of the world. We're going to be coloring that in a different color. Let me put the cap on that one. Then I have got my dark Petal Pink Stampin' Blends. And I'm just going to come in here and come along the edges, and anywhere where it looks like I think there would be a little bit of a darker spot, kind of along her sides, anywhere where Stampin' Up! Has put a little bit of a shadow already drawn in the stamp for me. Again, just along the side, along the belt line. And maybe a little bit up here underneath her hair, because I assume that her hair would put a little shadow on it. And then I'm going to come back in with my light Stampin' Blends marker and just maybe try to, you know, do a little bit of blending, but I'm definitely going to try not to over blend this one because I feel like there would be some significant shadows in it based on where the sun is shining at. So there we go. That is my awesome coloring for Petal Pink. Then I have got light and dark mint macaron. And again, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to start with the light, and I'm going to color her belt. At least I think that's a belt. I'm not even entirely sure. And her hat with the light. And then we'll come back in with the dark and add a few shadows, and that will be all for that one too. All right. So again, I'm going to just put in the shadows based on where I think they would be. And where the stamped image shows me that they might be. So again, kind of along the edges, and then come back in with the light and try to blend just a little bit. Again, I'm not blending a lot on these. The lighter colors are a little more forgiving as far as not needing to blend them as much. The darker ones, you'll sometimes notice a little bit more of a significant line or a harsher line between the two. For her hair, I used one of the new natural tone Stampin' Blends markers, I think is what they're officially calling them. This color is listed as SU400, which is in the medium, I think it's just medium or medium darks. I don't know. It's one of the medium shades. It's the SU400. And I'm just going to, again, very niftily and neatly, not at all color her hair. Well, I mean, I'm coloring her hair, but not at all neatly, I guess is what I should say. And again, just basically getting color on it. And I love these kind of sketchy looked images because you don't have to do them perfectly. This color is the SU 800, and I know that this is the really light, the lightest set of markers. It's the darker of the two. Does that make sense? Because there's a really light one that's almost like a closer to a petal pink, and then there is this one, and I used the second lightest, if that makes sense. And again, the number on the side of it is SU 800. And these are sold, the natural tone blends were available for a little while. I think most of them are temporarily sold out. They will be available again. I'm seeing the latest update that I saw looks like they will be available again somewhere around the 3rd. So I think that everything is going to be back and available again around the 3rd. So yay for that. So, all right, I've got light and dark soft suede Stampin' Blends, and I'm just going to color in the little deck, or, you know, patio deck, I guess, railing, whatever you want to call it, that she's standing in front of. And again, I'm starting with the light and adding the color to everything that I can add it to here. And then we're going to go down the little railings, banisters, whatever. I'm sure that there's probably an official name for them, but I don't know any of them. Hey, Jackie, thanks for hopping in. And then I've got the dark soft suede. And again, I'm just going to take the dark and try to add it in the places where I feel like there might be a shadow. Like I said, where she's standing at, and kind of the back side of the railing, because I assume she's looking out at the sunset, you know, or the sunrise or the sun or whatever. So that is my assumption, is that you'd have a little bit of a shadow on this side of it. And then I'm going to take my light Stampin' Blends and just try to blend them together just a little bit. And you can probably see what I was talking about with the darker colors. Sometimes there's a little bit more of a contrast between your light and dark. So generally with the darker ones, I do find that I need to do a little more blending. With the lighter ones, not as much. So that's one nice thing if you're just learning to use them. Start with flowers and start with the lighter colors. Those are my recommendations, and you'll have fun playing with them. All right, next up I have got Pool Party, and I'm using the light Pool Party only. And hi A, I like that. I could go by A. I answer to almost anything. I was raised in a family of 6 kids, so really you can call me almost anything and I'll answer. So my mom used to go down the list. Paul, Amy. So you always knew you were in trouble if your name came out first. So I've just got the light Pool Party Stampin' Blends marker, and again, I'm just kind of color in closer to her. I'm doing a little bit more solid coloring in, and then as I go further away from her towards the edges, I'm kind of trying to have it be a little bit not as solidly colored, a little more scratchy, sketchy, whatever you want to call it, look to it. So there again, I'm coloring in a little bit closer to her, a little bit darker, and then kind of trying to go to the edge, and I don't know, give it a little watercolory look, I guess. I don't know if you can really do that with blends, but giving it as not a straight edge on it, I guess. All right, so that is the background. And again, I know you all are impressed with my fantastic coloring skills. The final color that I added was light and dark Blackberry Bliss, and that is what I colored her drink in with. I envisioned that to be some sort of a wine. Again, I am not a wine connoisseur, and I know they're usually a little less purple and a little more red, but purple went with the color scheme, so, so that's why I went with it. So I'm glad that hopefully the tips are helpful to you. Like I said, I just usually, you know, it's just a matter of playing with them, and the more you play with them, the more fun you'll have using them. So, all right, so that's it for the coloring. Again, I know you're all impressed with my amazing coloring skills. So I've got my frame, and I'm actually flipping it upside down, as well as my picture, the focal image, I guess. And I'm going to try to line the two up. Since they were cut with the same die, they should line up fairly easily. And then I have got my trusty Scotch tape, and I'm just going to tape this image back. Whoop, that is way too much Scotch tape. There we go. Going to tape the image back in place so it looks sort of like, again, just trying to go for the picture frame look with it. So got that, taping it in there. and run it along the side. Oh, Julie, you're too kind. You don't have to say it was beautifully done. I know my coloring is not beautiful. Like I said, it's functional is what I will call it, and I try, and it's fun, so that's why I keep doing it. So, all right, so we've got that taped together, and then when I flip it back over to the front, hopefully, I'm going to scoochy that in just a, maybe. Scooch it in just a little bit with the tape. There we go. Better? I don't know. All right, so we're done with the Scotch tape. And then I'm going to flip it back over again here and add some Stampin' Dimensionals. I want to make sure that I get at least a couple Stampin' Dimensionals up here near the top so that the entire frame is kind of supported as I stick it onto the card front. And then we'll stick a few here in the middle and I'll be all done. So, well, at least all done with the, not all done. I don't know. All done with the dimensionals. All right, so as I peel the backings off here, the only thing that I wanted to be a little bit aware of when I did add my dimensionals on here is just making sure that I kept this area without dimensionals in it, because I'm going to stick it on my card front and that area will be over the top of the twine. So I didn't want a weird lump in there, so I just make sure that I keep the dimensionals down closer to the bottom, and we shouldn't have that issue. All right, then I'm going to take this and slide it over here and try to stick it so that it's somewhat centered and somewhat straight. The diagonal lines can either be a good thing or a curse when you're trying to line things up. I think I got it on there fairly straight. Hopefully it's somewhat centered. I don't know about that, but you can always snip it off and try it again if you end up with it. It's a little crookedy, but I'm going to go with it. So if you don't like the placement on it and you get it stuck down with your Stampin' Dimensionals, it's really easy to take it off. Just take your scissors, slide it between the two, and snip your Stampin' Dimensionals that way. And then you can flip it over and restick dimensionals on it, and you'll be all set. So that's my one tip, because I've messed up enough things that I know how to fix them. So, all right. So I've got the sentiment here, and it is in fact a bigger sentiment. It says sometimes the most productive thing you can do is relax, and I didn't want the whole sentiment on there. I wanted it to be a little smaller sentiment, and I just wanted it to say relax. So I took the easy way out and just grabbed my Blackberry Bliss Stampin' Blends marker. And Blackberry Bliss is one of the colors in this pack of Designer Series paper, so that's kind of where I pulled the colors from. For the images that I colored, is I just took them straight out of the pack of paper, which I love that Stampin' Up! Gives us all the colors and helps us to coordinate things, because I'm not always very good at picking out colors that look nice together. So I'm just taking my Stampin' Write marker, not Stampin' Blends. So the Stampin' Write is the water-based marker. Stampin' Blends, if you try to do this technique and color your stamp would be permanently colored very nicely, but you would not get a very good stamped image with it. So make sure that you're using the Stampin' Write marker for this. And then I'm going to breathe on it, just like you were trying to fog up a window. So think about that as you hear me doing this. And that kind of re-moistens the ink. And then stamping it on basic white cardstock. And there you go. So it only gives you part of it. You can also, if you're really good at masking, you can mask off the top part. But since these were pretty close together, I wasn't sure that masking would be very easy with this one. So that's why I went with the marker technique instead, and you get basically the same effect. All right, let me grab my dies. And again, I'm going to show you how I did this. So this is the set of stitched rectangle dies. You see, I'm glad I'm not the only one who pulls colors from the designer paper packs. I do it all the time because I look at them and I'm like, I love all these colors. What's in there? And that's what I use. So, all right. So first things first, I'm going to run it through the die cutting machine with it slid over fairly close to the left-hand side of the die, or left-hand side of the image. So I'm going to take this and just, if this were a whole piece of paper, it would cut out the whole thing. But since I stamped it on a little tiny piece, it's going to cut it off on the edge. But I'm just going to take this and run it through the die cutting machine. Hey, Linda, thanks for hopping in. I'm glad you liked the card. Oop, of course, my die scooted. Thankfully, I did it before I started cranking the die through. All right, so now what we're left with is a too long little rectangle, I guess, with your sentiment on it. Since I wanted it trimmed a little closer, I just take this same die and figure out basically where I want it to land on here, which is about there. And then I slide it back and forth until it catches on the little stitch die cuts. So basically, I'm just lining up the stitches. So you can feel it when it happens. It's not something that you can like really push it around and move it, but you can definitely tell when it's kind of locked into place, which it is. And then you can just take this and run it right through your die cutting machine all the way through, and it will cut off this piece and it'll give you the nice stitched edge on it as well. So I'm going to go do that right now. All right, so that's it. So it just takes it and trims off the edge with that same die that you used earlier. And then it cuts it down to the size that I wanted it to be. So I'm going to take a little bit of Stampin' Seal, and I'm going to put that, again, I'm trying to pay attention. I want to make sure that the Stampin' Seal ends up in this corner, since that's what's going to be on the raised area. Okay, there we go. The raised area on my card front. And then I'm going to grab a couple of Stampin' Dimensionals and put those, well, actually, I'll probably just put one right there on the edge, and flip it over and stick it on my card front here. And just go like that. And I've got my Stampin' Seal here and my Stampin' Dimensional there, so it gives it a little bit of balance and it's not too crazy looking. Then I grabbed some of the polished dots. And again, I know the catalog says that these are Calypso Coral, and I'm sure that they coordinate quite nicely with Calypso Coral, but every time I look at them, all I see is Petal Pink. And so I've been using them with Petal Pink instead of with Calypso Coral. So like I said, I'm sure that they look lovely with Calypso Coral, but I think they look really nice with Petal Pink, so that's what I'm going with, and you know, that's my story, I'm sticking to it. All right, just add in a couple of the little polished dots on here next to the ribbon, or next to the linen thread, and that's really all there is for the card front. So super simple, a little bit of simple coloring, a little bit of die cutting, and it's done. On the inside of the card, I've got a piece of basic white cardstock, and this one is cut to about 4 inches by 5 1/4. And I've got mint macaron ink, and the sentiment says, of course, you're always so good to others, be good to yourself too. So I thought that was kind of a good sentiment for the inside of the card. Just going to stamp that in mint macaron ink and hope that I got it centered and somewhat straight, which I think I did both, but it, you know, probably isn't perfect, but it's close enough. And then I've got a little piece of the leftover designer series paper that I trimmed away from the card front. We're going to add that in with Stampin' Seal. Again, maybe, if I can get my Stampin' Seal to start rolling. There we go. All right. Oh, thanks, Denise and Akiko. I'm glad you're liking the card. Thanks, Jackie. Glad you like the colors, too. Like I said, I pulled them straight off out of the Designer Series paper pack, which is one of my favorite things to do. It gives me different color combinations than I would come up with myself, and probably a lot better ones, too. All right, so that's now trimmed down to about 4 inches across by about, I don't know, this is probably closer to 5/8 inch, but somewhere between 1/2 and 5/8 inch. And I'm going to use a little Stampin' Seal to adhere that to the inside of the card base. And we're going to be all done with the card today. All right. Hopefully get it centered and somewhat straight. Fold it in half, give it a quick crease here, and we will call it good. All right. So definitely this stamp set is actually available right now in the current mini catalog. The beautiful die set is actually going to be available starting on May 3rd when the new annual catalog starts. And this awesome pack of paper, the Designer Series paper, is also going to be available beginning on May 3rd. And the pack of paper, don't forget, is one of the host exclusive items, so you can get it with your host rewards or Stampin' Rewards with an order or a party of $150 or greater starting on the 3rd of May. So if you have questions about how that works, let me know. I'll be happy to chat with you more about it. Thanks for joining me today. I will plan to be live on my YouTube channel on Friday around 2 o'clock Eastern Time, and then back here live on Facebook around 2 o'clock Eastern Time next week, Tuesday. Thanks so much, Trudy. I appreciate that. So thanks for joining today. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Enjoy the rest of your week, and hopefully we'll see you on Friday.